Hello, this is Johnny's Prime with me and Estimate in our lead stories. This a looming shortage of fuel hits Ghana as reports indicates the central bank is rationing dollars after oil prices surge following Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Something I think with about 250 million, we're doing about 50% of our requirement, and now I think they've scaled down to about 20-25% of our requirement, which would imply BDCs will have to now fall on the open market.
Also, Attorney General fights off claims government is starving the Office of Special Prosecutor of funds, dismissing the allegations as malicious.
The record will show, and the Chief Director is here, that apart from the amount released for compensation of employees, only a total amount of less than a quarter of what was reported as having been received by the OSP.
Well, as the board for the Office of Special Prosecutor is finally inaugurated, we'll tell you why the Special Prosecutor says it's not been easy since his appointment.
Hitherto, it has just been I and my deputy who have been knocking our heads over the other. It has been very difficult.
In this package, Agric Ministry pushes for a new law that will compel commercial banks to disburse a percentage of all their loans to the agric sector.
I had a meeting with the Indian High Commissioner in my office today for him to give me that legislation so that we can look at it and adapt it to our Ghanaian situation, and with the help of the Attorney General, go to Parliament. If persuasion fails, then you use the law.
We'll hear from the minister, who has also dismissed claims the hikes in food prices as a result of the failure of the Planting for Food and Jobs program.
It's a price. It's not physically. There's what I'm saying. I was going out there thinking that, oh, I wouldn't see any stock, but there's stock, and you ask them, everywhere you go, no, there's food here. There's food.
Also coming up here on Joy News Prime, you will face the Privileges Committee if you snub the House. Speaker warns as the Transport Minister becomes the latest minister who's failed to appear before the House to answer questions.
We tempted to refer his conduct to the Privileges Committee, but because of the intervention of leadership,
Hello again, thanks for choosing us. Now, a Bloomberg report indicates a looming fuel shortage in the country as a result of the central bank's rationing of dollars after oil prices surged following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The monthly fuel import bill for the West African nations jumped from $450 million in May. That's up from the $250 million in January. And that's according to two people who have knowledge of this industry and this matter. The central bank is offering just about $100 million a month at its foreign exchange auctions. Licensed bulk distributors can no longer plug the shortfall in the black market. The people said, asking not to be identified as the matter isn't public yet. But the executive director of the Chamber of Bulk Oil Distributors, Senor Hosi, raised these concerns on Top Story on Joy FM a while ago.
Challenges, which is a fact with the foreign currency situation. And the truth is, if that continues, we are going to have challenges with suppliers making products available to Ghana. Just as simple as that, because nobody pays CDs for oil internationally. You need to have US dollars. We actually anticipated these challenges. As a matter of fact, they had gotten tighter much earlier, and under the leadership of our minister, Honorable Matthew and his team, as well as the governor and the other deputy governors and the MPA, they've been cooperating with ourselves to address this. So we've got the Bank of Ghana to actually commit a special auction for BDCs, which was not the case. So the central bank has, since I think March thereabout, been taking a very proactive intervention for our market. But that also is limited. We started, I think, with about 250 million. We're doing about 50% of our requirements. And now I think they've scaled down to about 20-25% of our requirements, which which would imply BDCs will have to now fall on the open market to meet the rest of the requirements. That has gotten a bit tricky in recent times because we've had challenges with that predictability and certainty. So yes, we have to sometimes work with the open market, and unfortunately, in some cases, practically fall on the black market, and it's a situational truth, but which is not ideal. The foreign currency market, I think everybody knows, has gotten tighter for us as a Ghanaian economy. And if we do not deal with that well for oil, may in the future create a crisis.
So just for clarity, currently we have stock to last us a month, is what you said.
We have stock to last you a month and a few more to come.
Okay.
But that does not mean that there's enough confidence or certainty from the international market when they are seeing challenges with us making good our dollar payment.
Let's speak now to Duncan Amwa, who is the Executive Secretary at the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers, COPEC. Thank you very much, sir, for your time and joining us, Prime. So this is not entirely new, except that it is threatening to get worse, as the Bloomberg report suggests, and as confirmed by the BDCs. You had Senior Hosi there. What can be done, Mr. Amwa?
Well, let me say good evening to you and to your viewers. And this was a situation that I had hinted as of last week during a submission on one of your sister networks, Asempa, and subsequently on another station, that clearly the intervention that we had requested for BOG to put in, which we were quite aware that Bank of Ghana had accepted to work with and was subsequently making dollar available to the petroleum importers, was being worked on, had steeply dropped or declined from the 50%, 45% it started with to about 20-25%. What that would mean would be that the BDC and the other oil traders, the suppliers, would need to source for the remaining dollars from the open market. Now, that will clearly be one of the key reasons the city will continue to depreciate. And so we were still of the view that you need to have some stopgap measures in place to ensure that BDC and the oil traders don't necessarily need to import finished products. If you go to the crude markets, you'll probably still need a dollar, but the frequency of importation and then subsequent repayment schedule for a refinery could be totally different from one that is importing finished product altogether. And so we had asked that toll be fixed. I recall the Deputy Energy Minister had given an indication that a program has been worked on to ensure one of the private actors, Vitol, together with some Ghanaian partners, revamp the refinery immediately. We are hoping that TOR will be brought back on stream. We are not in very normal times. We've moved away from that period where price fluctuations were somewhat predictable to a point where you simply have escalation day in, day out. And so you cannot keep your refinery grounded only to come to the open market and then change so much of the cedi to the dollar and then repatriate to pay the supplier.
That suggestion of TOR, Mr. Amwa, that suggestion of bringing TOR on board also brings me to the controversial suggestion, if you want, of hedging, which obviously has its own fiscal implications. But would you suggest that government consider that given the trend that we've seen over the period?
Well, Leonard, I do think sincerely that where we've gotten to, we need very drastic decisions taking immediately. The outlook for international markets between now and December is not one of a decline. It's not one of a bearish sentiment, but bullish. Prices are
Indeed.
simply likely to inch upwards anyhow you look at it. And so if you could get to hedge, of course, the major players would also come in knowing very well what the numbers are looking like and be looking to cash in as best as they could. But then again, you could also have bots come in to the rescue.
Very well.
You cannot continue to leave your buffer or your bulk oil storage holder to, at this point in time, this crucial point, continue to behave like a private BDC who trades, buy and sell off. You would
Very well.
need to stock up. How you stock up and what kind of negotiations you go into with the international oil traders simply would hinge on, our preparedness to pay for whatever guarantees we give them.
Mr. Amwa, I'm
clearly
grateful
calls
for your
for
time. We'll have to end it here because of time, but I'm grateful for the suggestions that you have made keenly to bring on TOR to mitigate the effect of the international markets, what we are seeing play out internationally. But let's move on to our Greek now, because the ministry is pushing for a new law that will compel commercial banks to disburse a percentage of their credit facilities to persons or individuals or entities in the agri sector. The sector minister said the move was informed by complaints from poultry farmers about challenges in accessing credit. Dr. Friyakoto made this revelation whilst responding to claims that government's ban on the importation of maize is to blame for decline growth in the industry. He spoke on PM Express on the Johnny's channel.
They are not giving them the credits for them to maintain the herds of poultry that they have. So they are having to cut back by selling part of their chicken so that whatever money their working capital can buy will be able to feed. And that's the phenomenon going on. And they were thinking that it's the fault of government. But when we went there and sat there and explained to them the whole situation, they understood. At the end of the meeting, there was a very cordial departure between us and them. They understood that it's the banks which have failed them. Because if you're a poultry farmer, professional poultry farmer, you farm 10, 15 years, obviously you have a relationship with the bank. And if your situation has changed, your cost of production has gone up, they should support you. But they are not. They rather give these monies to these women going to China to buy these cheap stuff to come and sell.
But the banks respond to government policies also.
But they are not responding this time.
But what is the government policy to encourage banks to give out?
No, we don't have any government policy on that. This is monetary policy. Interest rates are this and that and that. Yeah, I've had a meeting with the Indian High Commission in my office today, this morning, for him to give me that legislation so that we can look at it and adapt it to our Ghanaian situation, and with the help of the Attorney General, draft something for Cabinet to approve to go to Parliament.
So in essence, what you're saying is that if you pass this through Parliament, the banks will be compelled to give a portion of their loans
for agricultural
purposes.
Yes. Farmers, processors, and all those in the value chain.
Okay. In India, you say it's what, 5%?
No, 20%.
20%.
Yes.
That's significant.
Yeah. 30 years.
You're looking at the same range?
Well, I don't know, but definitely the principle is that if persuasion fails, then you use the law.
Well, the Chamber of Agribusiness says the improper implementation of the Planting for Food and Jobs program is partly to blame for the hikes in food prices. But the Agri Minister disagrees. Dr. Friyakoto said the program has been perfect.
It also depends upon the evacuation and all those things, which will come under the authority. See, at the moment, all these access to the areas, farmers are complaining, oh, the bridge is broken here, or they won't even come because the axles will get broken and all those things. So in terms of evacuation and all those things, these all add up to the supply situation. You may have stocks which are locked up somewhere in OT region, for instance. Occasionally you hear that yams are there in hundreds of thousands of tubers, but there's no access because the little bridge there is broken or something has happened. And people can't evacuate, So we have all these kinds
but that's not the main problem, is it? The main problem is that we are not producing enough locally now in grains.
Why do you say that? If we're not producing enough, there shouldn't be any stock in the market.
There is stock, obviously.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
There is stock.
Yes.
It's whether it's enough
Why not?
for
Why
the
not?
entire
Yes.
needs that we currently have?
Yeah, of course. It's enough. It's a cost. This is what I'm saying. That is the cost of the stock that we are talking about. The price, which has gone beyond their normal levels because of the what is happening in the world. Okay, so it's a price. It's not physically. This is what I'm saying. I was going out there thinking that, oh, I won't see any stock.
Well, let's speak to an economist and a finance lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School, Professor Lord Mensah. Thank you very much, sir, for your time on Joy News Prime. So what's your take on this move by the Agric Ministry, given the fact that we have a free market and the consideration of risk by the banks in giving or advancing credit?
Yeah, I think the Agric Minister was proposing an Indian model, which they want to adapt in our environment. But we need to understand that, the banks, normally mimic their lending depending on where they took their money from. So where they are picking their deposit from will determine where they lend to. So if the government will lend to them at a certain threshold and possibly give them that kind of a policy line to ensure that they lend to the agri sector, that is fine. But then we should understand that, the banks will always lend to areas of the economy that are doing very well. And so if the banks are not responding to agriculture policies, then effectively it tells you that indeed they don't trust their sector. And as a result of that, they are not prepared to lend to the sector. The banks have expertise to explore, the grounds to know which sectors of the economy that are doing well and restructure their loans in that regard. So effectively, if, the policy that he's talking about, probably it could be that the Indian government has a percentage that they lend to the banks and effectively force them to lend to the agri sector. Until we have that, I don't think any law can force, the banks to lend to the agri sector after this universal banking law. Let's take our minds back in the years. ADB, stands for Agri Development Bank. What's their loan structure when it comes to, their lending? You can go into details and realize that they themselves are not lending to the agri sector. So effectively, it has to do with, sectors of the economy that are doing well. And I believe that the Planting for Food and Jobs should have been a case study to give, the headlights. The agri sector is indeed a profitable area for which the banks will whet the appetite of the banks to put their money there. But I don't think, as it stands now, they have any baseline to lend to the sector.
If this goes through, given the current conditions, what are likely to be the implications, especially for the banking sector and perhaps the economy at large?
Well, what will happen is that people will start keeping their money. If it happens, that is a policy, because the Ghanaians themselves don't really trust the agri sector. When monies are being channeled in that sector, and we can count the possible losses, and no depositor will lend money for a bank to lend to a sector that they don't have confidence in. So possibly people will start sleeping on their monies, and we'll have a system where people will not like to send their monies to the bank, but then in the end we're going to have a struggle financial system.
Very well. Thank you so much for your time. That's Professor Lord Mensah. He's an economist and a finance lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. The Attorney General has defended the government's resourcing of the Office of Special Prosecutor, making a comparison with his own ministry. He said the OSP has far more resources to work with. Now, there have been concerns government has failed to adequately resource anti-graft agencies following the revelation that it was yet to even constitute a board for the OSP. But speaking at the swearing-in of the board of the OSP, Godfrey Debo-Adame dismissed claims that government has not shown enough commitment to fighting graft.
Though a necessary organ for the smooth operations for the Office of the Special Prosecutor, it was for months functioning without a board. It also emerged it has received far less than it requested to operate. Joy News checks reviewed the OSP requested 1 billion Ghana cedis. However, only 170 million Ghana cedis was approved, and yet only 10 million out of the approved figure has been released. All of these culminated in a big national conversation about the government's commitment to fighting corruption. But today, The Attorney General Godfred Yeboah-Dame said government has demonstrated enough commitment.
We all owe a duty to contribute to the success of this institution. At this stage, may I say that some malicious, ill-founded and often ill-researched comments in the media about the office, the resources at its disposal, hardly serve the public interest. I was intrigued when one media house reported recently that only an amount of 10 million Ghana cedis has been released so far this year for the Office of the Special Prosecutor. This, the media house reported, without regard to a general situation affecting budgetary allocations and releases for institutions investigating and prosecuting crime and the promotion of good governance in the country generally. The record will show, and the Chief Director is here, that apart from the amount released for compensation of employees, only a total amount of less than a quarter of what was reported as having been received by the OSP has been released for operations of the entire Office of Attorney General and Ministry of Justice and the 7 agencies under the ministry, including all the offices it runs in all the 16 regions of Ghana. There is the unfortunate circumstance the ministry contends with, but we do not make a public spectacle of it because we understand the times in which we are.
With no board and peripheral workers, the Special Prosecutor Kisi Ejabin said it was difficult working with his deputy.
Hitherto, it has just been I and my deputy who have been knocking our heads over. It's been very difficult, but we have held the fort so now, and we warmly welcome you to the fold. I see a few faces who were in the first board, at least from my records, and I would extend a warm welcome back to the board. Mr. Attorney General, we assure you of our quest to put in our full professional best so that this office would become the foremost anti-corruption agency in Africa. You can count on that.
The Minister for Justice hopes the newly sworn-in 9-member board of the OSP will discharge their duty without fail.
That I will at all times well and truly serve the Republic of Ghana as a board member of the Office of the Special Prosecutor.
For Joy News, Michael Ashali.
And my colleague Kofi J, who is with our research desk, joins me in the studio with some breakdown of the OSP's budget request and what has actually been released over the period. Kofi, what does the figure say?
Right, so Ernest, let's start with the 2022 budget. And, the total allocation was 170.5 million, Ghana cedis allocated to the Office of the Special Prosecutor. And if you do a breakdown, 116.8 million is supposed to be used for management and administration. And 53.7 million is supposed to be used for anti-corruption management or to fight corruption in 2022. Now, we did a comparative analysis of the budgetary allocation to the Office of the Special Prosecutor from 2019 to 2021. So here we are looking at two things, the budgetary allocation and the actual releases. So in 2019, a total of 180.2 million Ghana cedis was allocated to the office, and only 64.1 million Ghana cedis was actually released to the office for operation. That was 2019. And then in 2020, 188.1 million Ghana cedis was actually released to the ministry, allocated to the ministry, and just 40.8 million Ghana cedis was released to the ministry for operation. And Ines, I want you to look at the widening gap between the budget amount and the actual release. So last year, 124.1 million Ghana cedis was the budgetary amount for the office, and just 28.4 million Ghana cedis was released to the office. Now, if you compare what was actually released to what was actually paid out to the office for operation in 2019, 28.9 million cedis was the actual payment, and this was just 16% of the total budgetary allocation to the office. And 2020, we had just 0.62 million, which is somewhere around 625,000 Ghana cedis,
okay,
which was just 0.33% of the actual allocation. And in 2021, 6.4 million out of the budgetary allocation was actually the payment, and this was just 5.2% of the budget that was allocated to the office. So there you have it, a trend analysis of what the budgetary allocation to the office from 2018 to 2022 this year. And you can see that it was 2018 that they had the least 3.8 million Ghana cedis, and it's been climbing from 2018 to 2019. But from 2019 to 2021, there's been a decline in terms of the amount allocated to the office. This is according to the Office of the Special Prosecutor's own program-based budget released by the Finance Ministry.
Yeah.
And just like Papani was saying, we understand that the office requested for 1 billion Ghana cedis this year, and just 170.5 million was the actual allocation to the office, and it's just 7% of what 70% of what was actually requested for. Now, why 1 billion Ghana cedis? Number one is to set up the office. Two is also help build a cyber security and forensic lab, and to build cells to keep suspects and purchase other logistics important to the Office of the Special Prosecutor. Ernest.
Kofi, thank you very much, as always, for putting the figures there for us and putting it in context. You're watching Joy News Prime with me, Ernest Mino. Now, the Speaker of Parliament, Alban Badbin, says Transport Minister Kweku Ofori-Siama will be referred to the Privileges Committee if he fails to appear before the House to answer questions from MPs. The minister was expected in Parliament today to answer 9 questions, but failed to show up. In a rare show of bipartisanship, leadership of both the minority and majority took on ministers who don't show up in the House. Parliamentary correspondent Kweku Asante reports.
The last few weeks, the minority in Parliament have been insistent on having ministers of state appear in person to answer questions from MPs. Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta bore the brunt of Parliament last week when he failed to appear to answer questions. According to Minority Chief Whip Muntaka Mubarak, the House must crack the whip on ministers who refuse to appear before the House to answer questions.
Ministers are gradually turning this House, Mr. Speaker, for lack of a better word, like a joke. Because, Mr. Speaker, they wait until the morning of asking the questions, then now they will run to you that I cannot come because there's one agent thing or the other. And so therefore, the Minister for Transport in particular, yes, he used to be one of those who happily come to the House and answer questions. But Mr. Speaker, of late, time and time again, Mr. Speaker, I can recollect that this will be about the 3rd time I alone is raising concern about his inability to appear before the House. Mr. Speaker, I will be grateful that you help this House hold these ministers accountable. This is one of the tools that is used in holding them accountable. So for the ministers to be picking and choosing when they want to come, Speaker, I believe as a House, we need to resolve. Because unless the person is sick, you have deputy ministers, you don't even have the courtesy of sending even a deputy minister.
His comments came on the back of Transport Minister's failure to appear before the House to answer 9 questions in the name of some MPs. In a rare show of bipartisan support, Majority Chief Whip Frank Anodompre backed the arguments of his colleagues in the minority and called for the naming and shaming of such ministers.
You cannot bring your correspondence or excuse duty on the same day that you are supposed to appear before this House. That is totally unacceptable. And it's something we shouldn't romance at all. And probably this will be the last. We will not entertain this kind of attitude and bring in a notice at the very day you are supposed to take a question. That will not be accepted. And I'm not too happy about it. So I'm in total agreement with the worries we expressed, especially relative to the Transport Minister. And like you rightly said, he's one of the ministers who have been very diligent. But these days, his attitude leaves a lot to be desired. So, Speaker, I'm only going to plead that we will try and reprogram him for him to appear.
Speaker of Parliament Alban Bagbin warned ministers of state that he will not tolerate their continuous absence in the House.
Ministers don't decide when they will appear to the House to answer the questions. That decision is not for ministers. That decision is for the House and the Speaker. This constitutes contempt of the House. I am tempted to refer his conduct to the Privileges Committee. But because of the intervention of leadership, I will resist that temptation. But the next conduct tantamount to this behavior will be referred to the Privileges Committee.
You're watching Joy News Prime. Still to come, residents of communities along Sankot to Cape 3 Point in the Ahanta West municipality of the Western region are calling on government to fix their deplorable roads to help save lives. We have details of this and more after the break. Please stay with us. Hello, thanks for staying with us here on Joy News Prime. Now, residents will go back to Parliament before we hit the Western region because the NDC MP for Ashaman, Ernest Nodbe, is heading to the courts to seek an annulment of the contract between Government of Ghana and Ajayi Associates. Now, Ajayi and Associates was sole source a contract for the National Cathedral project and have so far been paid 32 million Ghana cedis for consultancy. According to Ernest Nodbe, there was no legal basis for government to single source the project to Ajayi and Associates.
A single source is not a crime in Ghana, but there are preconditions that will necessitate any entity to apply the single source procurement method. And so if that is not done, then you can say that it is illegal, because in procuring the services of David Ajayi as a consultant or architectural consultant, you need to follow certain process. The office of the president has written to public procurement under section 72(5)(a) that David Ajayi is the only architectural consultant in the whole world. And so therefore they should grant him a single source procurement method. They should award the contract to him. The Public Procurement Authority intend, knowing very well that David Ajayi could not be the only consultant in the whole world, use 72(5)(b) by awarding the contract to him. And that is what I'm saying, that 72(5)(a) or B does not fall under this circumstance, because even to be, what is the emergency here? There's no emergency under this circumstance to build a cathedral. And so therefore you cannot award a contract, a consultancy contract, under single source procurement.
Well, the Ashaman MP is heading to court to seek an annulment of the contract and also to demand a refund of the upfront payments made to Ajayi and Associates.
He's been paid at least about 10% of the amount of money or so, the total contract sum, which is also against the law. When you look at all over the world, maximum paid 5% for consultancy. And so in this case, 10% was paid. Where does the 5% goes? Nobody can tell. And so therefore, the only place that we can settle this matter is the law court, and that is why I'm considering going to court. As we speak now, I'm considering going to court to settle this matter. We'll have to nullify the contract between the government of Ghana and David Ajayi, and also David has to refund all monies paid to him back to government, because under section 92 of the Public Procurement Act, that is where the punitive measures are, and that should be applied to him or any other entity that is involved in this case. Don't also forget that it was unfortunate that within this period that the PPA has granted this particular single source procurement. The current Attorney General was a member of the board.
Let me take you now to the Western region, where residents of communities along Sanko to Cape 3 Point in the Ahanta West municipality of the Western region are calling on government to fix their deplorable roads to help save lives. According to them, their communities are sometimes cut off from the capital, Agunankwanta, because no car can use the road. My colleague Samuel Kojo Brace visited these communities and now reports.
This is a section of the Sankro Junction Cape 3 Point Road in the Ahanta West municipality of the Western region. It connects Ghana's all-rich community, the Cape 3 Point, to the rest of the country. The deplorable state of the road has worsened in recent times. During the 2016 and 2020 elections, all political parties used the people's desire to have the road fixed to push their campaigns. But since 2017, the promise is yet to be fulfilled. Fati is a new mother. She tells me she nearly lost her life on this road whilst in labor.
I went into labor around 10 p.m. I was transported in a tricycle. I almost lost my life and the baby. And I bled profusely. Government must come to our aid because we vote as well. We are part of the country and need our roads fixed.
Just recently, a young man working on a stretch lost his life. His friends believe his would have been saved if they had rushed him to the Nana Himadechi Hospital in Descove early enough. They blamed the bad nature of the road. Anthony is a friend.
Worker. Okay. Yeah, bridge. And then no to here. Man, so but
we were working on the bridge when he collapsed. Due to the nature of the road, we couldn't get him to the hospital early enough, so we lost him.
But
according to him, drivers don't ply the road after 6 p.m., making living in these areas very difficult for residents, especially visitors.
The
drivers are suffering. When they come, they don't get the people. So by 6, none of them ply this road. People walk to get here.
Driver Ofori has driven on this road for years. He recounts how a young lady lost her life on the stretch.
A number 4 days, and I don't know. Ana yebeduri ase me ba no ka ba ko di mani baby gina ya haya enti chana ka no okolo di nua no duri hase no ana onu timi ntimi nko ntimi me park wo na chi.
4 days ago, it happened just here. Because of the gridlock due to the road, the driver carrying the patient couldn't get to the hospital early. We lost her.
Because Equani want to me drew this school on time. So, and Equani the Equani, yes, Remon pen for me, no me be found my yes, Remo, because of Equanity, Senya Quana, and Kamamino, the ocean, but Equani, oh,
Nana Bediako III is the chief of Elobankata and the Jasihini of the Lower Descove traditional area. He expressed disgust about how the road has been left unattended to for all these years.
It's no question me. Yeah, between the direct road to Cape 3 Point to Dam Oyeli. Ghana no mbia be when you good access of road one can win new resources bia. Buy mama your good resources.
This leads to the oil-rich Cape 3 Point. But look at our road. We have all the resources, but we are the ones with the bad roads. Our road is a tourist road, but look at it. We are exploring oil from Cape 3 Point, yet the road is not being constructed. We don't even understand.
But in basin there,
Communities along this road want government to fix the road for them. Anthony and Fatih want government to intervene to get the road constructed.
Mabadi amuma abayan asonti. Say ebe yase nipa be senemre akoto aba. Edi ama mpanimfo. Na ye sabi pedasa mbedru ha wi na nipa na nenu swade hunu a odeto aba no amamu a na chesa akoye ha kese edi amaye. Nti abato na yeto ye no mama so emra mfaso emaye so beba mfaso a enu ane ye ya ye de ye hwa firi o aban no ho ani o de ebenya no ene ne kwan ya se na ye be ya kone ye badi ye be tentemai de amaye
abaya to bi pa abade nti wo yi wonu ama hen ai wanka se yan wan kwasefo no wo ye bibi a aka da yan kwasefo yanka hu bi wo yi wonu ama hen ai wan fa ye so yanka na yan so ya ka hu bi ne wo to aba no ya to aba no ye ya to aba no so ama hon mo wa kwa kwatena so won ai won hwe hen.
People are dying, children are becoming orphans, and families are wailing because of this road. The earlier an intervention comes, the better.
We're taking a break here on Joy News Prime. When we return, we have showbiz.